with this. Hi, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. And welcome to the 13th day of the Marketing Cloud Personalization series. Thank you everyone for continuing the learning journey with all of us. And today's session, we have the Ask Me Anything panel. So this is going to be exciting because we have the experts joining us. And we have a lot of questions already filled in. I would like to invite Chris, Matthias, and Ben onto the panel, and also a special shout out to them for accepting the invite and joining us to share their experience and answering all the questions that we have today. Before we get started, I would like to invite Gilda. So everybody knows Gilda. She has been the support for all the programs, all the community events, and to support to all of us. So I would love to hear what Gilda has to share. And I know you are all waiting to hear what Gilda has to share. So Gilda, I will turn it over to you. Please share with us a few words.
Oh, thank you, JB, for giving me this opportunity to just say a couple of words. First off, JB, thank you for pulling this together for the community. This is extremely helpful. And I want to thank all the amazing speakers that took time out of their schedule. And to every single attendee, JB said 13 days. 13 days of investing in yourself. 13 days of investing in learning. 13 days of asking questions, and 13 days of looking beyond just what you currently know, but looking into your future. And 13 days of this learning journey is so monumental and so important, because a lot of times we get so busy in the day-to-day that we forget to invest in the most important thing, which is yourself. So hats off to every single one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to invest in yourself, to invest in learning more about the marketing cloud, and 13 days of standing by and supporting these speakers, because it's so important to understand, like, now is the time to invest in your future, not 5 months from today, because a lot of times what we do is we postpone. I'm going to postpone learning about Marketing Cloud. I know everything in Marketing Cloud. And the truth is nobody does. So what you've done is you spent 13 days in investing in yourself, 13 days also in investing in learning more about the Marketing Cloud. So I just want to applaud everyone, because this is extremely important now than ever to really understand programmatically everything there is to know in the Marketing Cloud. And what JB has done is she's pulled together some of the amazing speakers that we have in the community who knows the ins and outs of the Marketing Cloud to truly help you understand all that there is to know about it. So in today's session, take the opportunity to ask questions, but also take the opportunity to network with them after the session is over, with all the speakers that have taken time out of their schedule to help answer any questions that you have and to help present. So thank you so very much for participating in the session. Thank you so very much for investing in yourself. And thanks again, JB, and to all the speakers. I look forward to following all of you and to continuing to support you in all of your learning journey.
Very rightly said, Gilda. The best investment is investing in ourselves. Thank you very much. You always, you never fail to inspire us. Thank you very much. So with that, I think we can go ahead and continue with our questions. So I have these questions. We will go by the questions that are already filled in the form prior. So the question is, does MCP have capability to delete transactional data associated with users without actually deleting the users?
Yes, we all want to answer because we just talked about this before the call started. I'll give a summary, and then Matthias or Ben, if you'd just like to follow up. In general, transactional data, let's define what that is. So transactional in this scenario would be purchases. Like you can't go and delete all of the user behaviors, but you can update a purchase and you can change the value of the line items that were part of it. You can change the count of the line items that were part of it. And you would use the transactional ETL more than likely to update those transactions. It doesn't affect the users, it doesn't delete them, but you cannot remove transactions from the system. Like they will be there in the event that originally created them will remain. But Mateusz, would you like to kind of tell them the pitfalls of this?
Yeah, there are a few pitfalls to it. First is that, just as Chris mentioned, it is not deleting the data. You can just overwrite the already sent data. But firstly, it will not impact all the places. So for example, if you change the purchase for $1,000 to $0, it will change the value spent by these specific users. It will change the lifetime value of this specific user. But if you go for the campaign reports on the revenue or the global spend captured by the Interaction Studio, it will not be updated. So this is super important if, for example, by a bug or a malicious intent action on the web page, someone makes a purchase of $69 million and it completely skews all your reports. Yeah, I have been there. You will not have an easy way to clean it up from the main dashboards. You will be able to clean it up on the user level only. And the second issue with the transactional ETL is that each transactional ETL push that you're making is not updating the event stream record, it's adding a new event stream record. So then you will have multiple event stream records. It doesn't create a lot of problems, but if you like a clean event stream on the user, you will see multiple duplicates for the same transaction being displayed there. So always be wary of how you are pushing the transactions.
I think that just to summarize, right? If your goal was to reduce the lifetime value of the person so that you could segment them in a certain way, and that was why you're asking this question, then this will solve it for you. But if you're concerned, like, hey, my reports are all messed up because we accidentally fed in a bunch of bad transactions, this will not fix it. And the only way to do it would pretty much be delete the users, and that's probably not ideal.
That helps. Thanks much, Ben. Thanks, Chris and Matthias. The next question is related to the Chrome plugin. So we do have the Chrome plugin for the Salesforce interactions. So is that used for prototyping only, or does the extension allows us to inject markup into the existing DOM? Or can it enable us to test different features? Or how is the actual change made to the page?
So I can pick it up. There is the new plugin. In the past, there were two different plugins. Right now, there is just one Salesforce Interactions plugin for the Chrome. And the answer is kind of all of that and more, because the plugin is useful for both checking how the sitemap that you implemented is working on the page. It's great for writing and testing your sitemap without impacting the real production data. It's also great because it is the only place where you honestly should be saving the sitemap. Because while there is an option within the user interface of the Interaction Studio to save the sitemap, it will not cover all the elements of the sitemap. So for example, the content zones will not be captured correctly if you save it there. So plugin is must-have to work correctly with the Interaction Studio. And of course, it also allows you to test and write and create and work with the campaigns, for example. There are even some cool features that are available only through the extension. For example, I have seen the use case that people wanted to copy their web campaigns that had like 20 different experiences. And you cannot do it in the interface, but you can do it in the Chrome extension. So it's definitely worth checking out what is possible with the extension.
Yeah, to address the can I inject markup, right? It's not the extension that's letting you do that necessarily, but the answer is yes. We're creating a JavaScript beacon file that ultimately the site's bringing in, and anything you want to write in JavaScript, you can do. And so if you want to look at the DOM and say, insert this element on the page, you can absolutely do that with the extension. You could also do that on the backend piece, though. Again, I would never recommend using it. I'd always use the extension. 99% of the time I'm working. But you know, an example of something I might do at the DOM is say, I have a survey I want to pop up on the screen, right? It's not really aligned to any content zone. And so I'm going to create a new, just a placeholder div I'm going to shove onto the screen, and then I'm going to tie a content zone onto that. So you can absolutely do that in the, you know, before you start configuring your sitemap, you can add in whatever JavaScript you want to run, whatever HTML you want to kind of append or change on the page before the sitemap actually runs. It's totally doable.
Final thought. It allows you to override a beacon that is on the page. And when we say beacon, that's the script from the data set you're working with. So if you have a production data set personalization and a test data set and personalization, and the production is actually loaded on the website, like it's running and it's collecting data, the extension will allow you on your machine in your browser only to overwrite the beacon that's out there and use your test data set. So you can test things, as Mateusz mentioned, without interfering with the actual live implementation. But it's use the extension. Always use the extension.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So moving on to the next question. Does MCP have capability to delete transactional data? I think we covered it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, this one's covered.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. I think this is not refreshed. I have added a few. I'm going to stop the screen share and share it again. Please bear with me. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sure. I can bring up one while you're looking it up. That's pretty quick to answer. So we have one about the mobile SDK, and it says, how can we capture interactions with MCP mobile SDK and send it to Data Cloud? And the answer to that is no different than how you do it on the web. So the event stream is what's being sent to Data Cloud, not any specific channel or anything of that nature, right? So if you're generating events using the mobile SDK, the event API, or wherever you're generating them, Data Cloud is just taking those events in and processing them however it wants to, right? However you set up your streams over there. So there's nothing special that you need to do for mobile, is the answer to that.
Awesome. Thanks much, Ben. So in the meantime, this comes up, I will move on to the next question. I will read that out. How can we capture user interactions with MCP mobile SDK and send it to the Data Cloud?
That's what I just mentioned that one. So yeah, okay. Again, nothing special there. Just capture the events however you're capturing there. And again, if you have Data Cloud hooked up, they'll send over in the event stream.
Awesome. So the next question, it is about the event stream. How can we access the event stream information from MCP within the Salesforce contact detail page?
Well, the easiest way to do it is to set up, we have an integration. So there's a managed package that you would install into Core. Oh, look at that. I see a link to the package. Thank you. And there are components. Once you've created that connection, there are UI components you just drag out onto the screen. One of them is the event stream. It's brand new, came out a couple of weeks ago. So it will list the events going back in time, and it will only load, I think, a day or two. And then you can request to load days that were further in the past. So it's really nice. Your other option there is to use the API. So you could write a custom Lightning component to talk to personalization and get certain data that you want to put into Sales Cloud.
That's helpful. Thanks much, Chris. And the next question it's a bit long. I will read that out. We have implemented product or recipe recommendation and used sitemap to capture view product category, add to cart, order transaction related details in MCP. Covered other pages of website, example, careers, blogs, contact us, also in the sitemap. What else I can suggest or implement in MCP? Do we have a document or a list of MCP capabilities? I think this is much about the recommendations and capabilities of the MCP, what can be achieved and all of the use cases.
So I would say that there are quite a lot of possible answers to this question. As for the document with the list of MCP capabilities, documentation, there are quite a lot of listed in, along with the, let me find the link. There was a cool link with the general list of capabilities. Here I have it. So let me push it.
Feel free to kick me out, Matthias,
Yeah.
if you want to share the screen.
So as for the main question, so what else can be implemented? There are three main approaches, I would say. One approach is that you want to implement everything and just have everything available. So then you have the triggered campaigns that can still be implemented, open time emails that can still be implemented. I haven't seen action decisions in the list. So there are quite a lot of other things that weren't mentioned in the question that can be implemented, that can be added to the stack. But I would rather think about whether from the current stack, you have the most value already pulled. Because just because you implemented the recipes, it doesn't mean that you have all the value that you can get from just implementing it. So for example, there is a lot of value from just making an A/B test between the recommendations. There is a lot of value from building new web campaigns using the sitemap that you already have implemented, but just covering a new use cases. Like, for example, not only slider on the homepage, but also maybe some recommendations on the empty search page or on the cart page. Just adding the same thing that you already have, but in new places with new use cases in mind. And finally, there is quite a lot of things that you can add that are not like interaction studio capabilities, but rather context and metadata that can improve what you already have. And some examples here is that, okay, you are capturing, for example, the product data, but you can use the ETL to send an additional information about your products. Like, for example, what tier the product is, whether it is a budget or a premium type of the product. You can send information about the which products are from a specific virtual categories that can be different from the main categories, and use all this information to create more personalized recommendations that it is possible from the baseline data. So yeah, sure, there is a lot of things that you can add from Interaction Studio, but I would first check whether you are getting the full potential of what you already have.
I'll give my take there. I agree with everything you just said. The other thing I would look at is, go through the global templates and just see what's out there. You might get some ideas around what those are doing in terms of use cases you might have. Maybe they're not perfect for what you have, but it's a list of, like, hey, this is using decisioning or Einstein decisions to pull in a recommendation. I'm not doing that. Maybe that's a functionality I want to go look at. In terms of, you've done all these things, and what's not in the global template today, and something I've been using a lot is the ability to now be able to put profile objects through the sitemap directly onto their profile. So for example, they come in off a UTM campaign, from Google or an email or whatever, creating a profile object that stores the last UTM campaign they came off of and the date they did. So then you can segment later and say, I want to see all my users that came from Facebook, right? So profile objects and the ability to write to them is, I think, extremely powerful. And because it's only as of late last year that we had the ability to do it, there's not a lot of use cases built around how to do that, but it's something to take a look at. So if you're not familiar with it, profile objects, in a way, it's kind of like cataloging, right? What you do with items, except that catalog exists on the user themselves. And you can create a custom set of properties, an object that stores up to 10 attributes and 100 of those objects. So, again, things like the campaigns they came in off of, products they might own, things like that can be associated to that user, and then you can segment on those objects and provide more personalized, unique experiences with those. But overall, take a look at the global stuff and see if, and there you get some ideas, surveys, trigger journeys, things like that are what I'm not seeing here that you can take a look at doing that once you kind of refine and feel like you've got everything kind of covered with what you've done already.
And one question addition to that, this is my question. Hello, this is Madhu.
Okay, sure.
My question is, I'm using contact us for case, like whenever customer is filling some concerns regarding the website or product, they're filling contact us form. So what I thought, I will create a cases. So is it fine to link cases with the catalog or in the
Not a
user?
catalog object, but it would definitely make sense to put as a profile object, right? That's
Right.
exactly kind of what profile objects are good for. So when they fill out the case, if you're not using the survey technology or functionality, right, you can, create as a profile object and then write that with the date. And then potentially you can kick off a journey builder, journey that does something with that. It says, hey, contact this department or send it over here, right? You can do a lot with that. Or just change the website experience, right? So they say, contact us. I hate your website. It sucks. Whatever their problem is, you might be able to programmatically mitigate that in the future if you have some kind of drop down value that, would allow you to say, oh, well, if they said they rated it a 3 and the reason was because they couldn't find something, maybe you know how to then surface that in the future for them.
Okay, thank you.
I love this. I would like to do this every week. Can we just get together every week and answer everyone's questions? I added a linked integration. So along the lines of like looking at global templates, look at the list of integrations. That'll tell you a lot of things you could do. Specifically for that last use case, you could make profile objects directly and send them directly into personalization, or depending on your stack, if you have Service Cloud, like you do the normal things to make the case in Service Cloud, then you can use Flow to create the profile object into personalization. Like there's a lot of things you could do. And that's kind of the point I wanted to make, if you're new to personalization, how to think of the product. It's not a tracking tool. It utilizes tracking interactions to accomplish a goal, but it's not a tracking tool. It's not a Google Analytics. It's not meant just to get a list of things that people do. It's to solve real-time use cases. Like that's what it does. So it wants to make real-time recommendations. It wants to make real-time changes to experiences, and it wants you to be able to create different experiences for different groups of people and test those. Like that's what it's for.
Wonderful. And moving on to the next question. I have to differentiate known user versus anonymous user without logging in. For example, I have data and deployed an email from the CTA. I have been redirecting them on website, but I don't want them to log in again. Hence, they landed through from email, so we can identify the user at this point of stage without logging in. If yes, can you explain how we can pass identity attributes into MCP?
Who wants to take it? I'll start, I guess. So there's multiple things going on here. One, they have the cookie on the browser. So potentially when they click on that email, you might already recognize them, right? They log in through the same device we've seen before, and we go, I know who this is. Now we can't log them in. We can't just pass their email and password into the website and get them logged in, but we can know who they are and customize the experience based on what MCP has about them. So that's the first part. The second part is, and oftentimes what we will see is they click on an email from a different device than they were interacting with before, right? So they're on their desktop, they're on your website, they abandon cart, they get an email from MCP about maybe going and checking out their cart. They click on it from their phone, and now they're on a different channel than you recognize them. In that case, you can pass in the URL parameters at the top, you can pass their MCP ID, you can pass their email address, whatever identity attributes you have about them, you can include in that URL at the top, and your sitemap can read that out of the URL and attach it to their profile when they come to the site, which will then recognize them and let them, again, work within that MCP profile you have of them. So you can't log them in directly, but you can certainly pass their identity in that URL and that request from the email or wherever else. And if you're not doing that and they land on your page and we do recognize them in general, you'll still have all that profile information about them. Does that answer whoever question this was?
I believe it answers. Thanks for the details, Ben.
Yeah, so just maybe two cents. Generally, you can recognize the contact if in any way you can get any identity attribute. So just as Ben mentioned, it can be the email that someone provides, it can be a cookie, it can be backend of the website, pushing the data to the data layer, whatever is the option, just as long as you can get any identifiable attribute, you can use the sitemap to push this attribute along with the action. and recognize the user, make it a known user session.
And to be clear, you do that on the on action event, right? So when they come to the site, before you're setting the sitemap, that's when you would recognize that person and pass that along so that when personalization loads up, it knows who that person is. So that's where you would handle kind of making that identity call.
That helps, Ben. Thanks, Matthias. So the next question, I think we haven't yet answered this one. Would like to get the user detail attributes like LTV from MCP to the data cloud. How can we bring these to the data cloud?
We can't.
Well, I have a thought there. No, you can't, but you can do a calculated insight based off the transaction fee from the user, right? So you can't bring in LTV directly, but you can see all their transactions. Those are flowing into data cloud. You can create a, what I just call it, a calculated insight that exists on their profile that would show that LTV.
Or you can calculate it on the marketing cloud or another tool, pass it as a custom attribute, and attribute will be available for the data cloud.
Yeah, that's the takeaway. It's the data cloud connector with personalization is predefined and rigid. So you can't just add whatever you want and pass it through to data cloud. You have to accept what it's passing. And right now, LTV is not one of those data points. So you would have to make your own user attribute, populate it somehow, then it sends through. That's one way to do it up front. Or if you want to do it in data cloud, as has been mentioned, make a calculated insight, build it yourself. There is a roadmap for personalization and the connector. There will be new things added to the connector. It's actively being worked on. We didn't give the traditional Salesforce don't make buying decisions on future features. So, be warned, it is a roadmap item. Sometimes roadmap items happen, sometimes they don't. This one is likely. So there will be more data coming through the connector over time, but right now this is not part of the connector.
That's helpful, Chris. Thank you very much.
My other thought there, just thinking about the, which way would I go? I would probably still do as a calculated insight, only because you might have data from multiple channels in which you want to calculate lifetime value. So I would create one calculated insight that probably does it, all the MCP stuff, all of your stuff from commerce or some other place that is, for whatever reason, doesn't exist, or call center, right? So yeah, there's lots of ways to do it, but I would probably opt to do a calculated insight and then sync that lifetime value back over into MCP once you have, the true lifetime value of this person. Or sync the transactions into that. That's another way to do it, but yeah.
Thanks, Ben. I think we can move on to the next question. Or the next one, I think we haven't answered this. Can one use Event API to update profile and or catalog object records?
Yes. I mean, yes, you can. What I would say is and maybe this is just me, I found the most success with actually going through the old Evergage namespace format when I'm using the Event API. I don't know if that's why, but when I format my calls to look like I would format a call from the sitemap, going into Evergage, that namespace, I was able to do it no problem. I've had some issues with using this Salesforce Interactions namespace formatting, but no problems with the Evergage one. That could just be me.
That helps. Thanks.
So the way to kind of figure out, how to make this request, for the most part, log out the event in the on action event before it goes to the server. Look at how that's formatted. That's essentially what you need to make in the Event API when you're calling to personalization. So how that looks, structure that kind of same call, like in a Postman or something, try it out. It's not exact, but that's going to get you nearest to what that needs to look like in order to do that. And then there's also a lot of documentation on what you can do with the Event API, other things you can do. So, I can look that up and put a link in here, but that's how I've been able to kind of accomplish those types of things. It's just looking how the sitemap does it and then replicating that over in a Postman environment until I'm happy.
That sounds interesting. Thank you. And the next question we have is, it's more about the data in the data cloud. Can you give us some insight on the data action in data cloud using MCP data streams? What are the use cases?
Well, there's going to be a webinar tomorrow where we talk about the connector between data cloud and personalization. So I would encourage you to join us there, where we're going to talk about some best practices, some tips, and some tricks. Use cases, they're your normal business use cases. Like, there's not a special use case that you would want with the connector. Like, there's not, the connector isn't going to solve a problem you can't solve a number of ways. So it's really taking a big picture look at your customer, what the problems they're trying to solve, their goals, building your use cases based on that, and then seeing if the connector can help you, achieve those things. The connector is sending prepackaged events, kind of like what we've talked about. So that's really where you have to get into the weeds and then decide if the data coming through the connector will help you achieve those use cases. Most of the time, a connector use case involves, I need some information from personalization and data cloud, so then I can run more calculations with the data I don't have in personalization, do all of that in data cloud. And then if I need to send an activation segment back to personalization, personalization will have that. So, I mean, I wouldn't say there's a perfect list of use cases for the connector. It's more about build your use cases based on what your customer needs, and then see if the connector can help you achieve that.
Thanks, Chris. Can you also share the link for the session tomorrow? I think this is a 6-part series, right? If I remember correctly.
It is a 6-part series, but each part covers a different topic. And tomorrow's our first one, and it's about the connector. It's just by chance. So yeah, I'll put a link in the chat.
I'm so looking forward to that session, Chris. And Matthias, I have one question that I believe you can answer it better. I love the blog that you have put up together for that. So this is about the catalog and the relationships between each of those items. Can you please give us a detailed overview of how the items are related and how they are connected?
Yeah, so it's kind of complicated. It's kind of not. Generally, there are few built-in catalog objects, like the product, like category. And those are super important because those built-in catalog objects have some backend magic that is not possible to replicate with custom objects. So you don't want to not use those built-in catalog objects, to be honest, in your implementations, because there's a lot of backend stuff that is happening for those objects that's helping a lot with the use cases. And going outside of it, it will break a lot of use cases. Apart from that, you can, of course, create a lot of custom objects, 25, if I remember correctly, the current limit. And as for the relationships there, it's up to you. So what you need to know is that, okay, there are few relationships that are built in, like the product to category, blog to category, article to category. And the rest is up to you to create with the relationships that you can build in the user interface. And it's really good to think about how you want to structure it and which elements should be on the attribute level and which should be on the catalog object level. That's probably one of the most irritating / beautiful things in the Interaction Studio, is that you can store attributes on the product from one of the most useful use cases, but you cannot create recipes based on the product attributes. But you can create custom catalog objects that will be related to the products that will have the IDs as those attributes. And those related catalog objects can be used as an includes, excludes, and etc. in the recipes, which opens a whole new world of the recipes that you can build by leveraging and including, for example, only products that have a specific attribute that the customer is currently viewing in their session, which is really, really nice thing. And I see on the chat related question to the subcategories. Yes, so there are, again, two things. One thing is that you can just create whole hierarchy of the categories directly in the category out of the box catalog object. And there you can have multiple levels of the categories. One caveat, you need to decide whether you will be using the sitemap to capture categories or the ETL to capture the categories, because those two methods are using a different way to build hierarchy of the categories. So don't mix and match, because it will be not nice. It will break. But you can also create custom catalog objects that will contain categories, which in most cases is not something that you want to do. In most cases, you will want to use the default categories object. But there are some use cases where, for example, you have the main category tree, and behind it, you have a virtual category tree that is not exactly working the same as the main category tree, because it's capturing various products from across multiple categories. And this can allow you to leverage this shadow tree using the recipes.
Thanks, Matthias.
My take on that, when I'm thinking about this always is, do I want to display it or do I want to use it functionally to filter my results, right? So if it's something I just want to display on the screen, that's an attribute. If it's something I think I might want to filter by, then it needs to be a related object in some way, shape, or form, so that in your recipe you can say, hey, only things like this, or none of the things like this. The only way to do that would be if they're related. But if it's just like, hey, here's an alternate image this product might have, that's an attribute, right? Because I'm not going to create another object just for that. I'm just going to say, hey, on this, here's this alternate image. And then when I'm pulling it in, I can pull that property and show it on the screen. So that's kind of how I try to balance, like, where does this belong? Is it something I need to filter on later, or is it something I just wanted to use to show in an email, additional description text, something like that, that's where an attribute lives.
And sometimes you want both. So for example, let's think about a brand. In many cases, you will want to have a brand as a related catalog object, because this will allow you to make includes on recipe elements based on the brand. So for example, show me products with the same brand that the user is currently looking at. But on the other hand, you might also want to have the same brand information as a custom attribute on the product, because it will allow you to personalize it. For example, for the open time email campaigns where you want to show the brand. So sometimes both is the right answer.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Ben and Matthias. And the next question I have is related to the integration between the Marketing Cloud and the MCP. So what is recommended way to connect the different BUs and the data sources in the MCP? Can we connect multiple BUs to the same data source, or we have to create that separately?
Conceptually, let's kind of talk just about how they connect personalization and engagement, the apps. So personalization is huge. It's a big application, does a lot of things. It's very flexible, but it's a very gigantic application, which is tethered to a Marketing Cloud engagement account. So you have to log in to engagement to get the personalization. Ben's smiling. But they are not literally connected. So it's not like you could have a data extension in Marketing Cloud and then just personalization will just use it with no further steps. So it's important to understand how they're connected. So I log in through engagement, then I have to open personalization and work with it. There are some considerations on how you work together between the two products, but you're not connecting a business unit to a data set. And the business units are what are in Marketing Cloud engagement. Data set is what is in Marketing Cloud personalization. And those are kind of your organizational things that you use. the thing to remember is that the one true connection that exists today are for triggered campaigns. So in personalization, I can create a triggered campaign, which will populate a journeys data extension in Marketing Cloud. And for that to work, to make that correlation between a BU and a data set, when you log into Marketing Cloud Engagement, you have to go to the BU where the journey lives. And then once you're in that business unit, you open personalization. So it's contextual. Personalization knows what business unit you came from. So then when it says, what journey do you want to connect your triggered campaign to? It will only show you journeys that were from the business unit you were in before you open personalization. So there's no wiring, there's no configuration to say this business unit goes with this data set. You just need to make sure that if you want to work with a journey that's in engagement, that you are in that business unit before you open personalization. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thanks, Chris. And the next question is about the Salesforce integration. So when we integrate multiple CRM instances with the MCP, what is the best practices? What are the recommendations?
Matt, Ben, either of you want to take a crack at that one?
I'm thinking whether it's even possible to connect multiple CRM orgs to a single Marketing Cloud personalization.
And not directly.
Yeah, only via APIs, I think.
I would think you'd have to have some kind of middleware solution that uses the event API to send in data and sync it. I mean, through the UI, there's only the one CRM integration point, right? So you can only be connected to one at a time. You would need something in the middle, or use something like Data Cloud to sync in the data that way, because you can connect multiple CRMs into Data Cloud and then bring the attributes across through a unified profile that way. So not directly in personalization. The product itself can't do it, but there are, native Salesforce way would be Data Cloud, I think would be my answer there. Beyond that, if you want to get creative, you can come up with your own solution that uses the event API to funnel things in.
And I think the question that is posted in the chat is more of the same question. Can we connect different data sets in MCP with different environments in SF Core? I think that's similar to the question you just answered.
It is similar. It is important just to understand how the integration works. So when you install your managed package into Core, you're linking to an account, to a personalization account, where all the data sets live. So once I've made that connection to that account, when I'm configuring like a component, so if I drag the event stream component and put it onto, let's say, a contact record page, I get to pick which data set that component is going to pull from. So there are some options you can do, but you can't create multiple versions of the same thing and put it in the same place for different data sets. So there's some nuance.
It is also connected to a single SF org. It's not possible to connect like SF org and staging org to the same data set, because there is just one, or even one personalization, because there is one just integration.
One connection.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. That's an excellent point. So once you have your one connection, you can pick a data set, but you can't have many connections.
And Data Cloud specifically, if you're doing this, you can add up to 5 data sets from that account. So there is a limitation on how many, but it doesn't matter which ones you want to pick.
I think we could have an entire session on the integrations with different SF and the Data Cloud, the Marketing Cloud. So it could take up an entire session, I believe. So next question, Chris, I think you may have better information about this, about the solution kits. So for the Commerce Cloud, what are the different types of solution kits available that can be readily used in the MCP?
I don't believe there are any solution kits for Commerce Cloud. We have one solution kit for Experience Cloud, which is really just a framework. It kind of teaches you what you have to do in Experience Cloud to have personalization, collect events properly, and to broadcast events properly. But I don't believe at this point in time we have anything specific for Commerce Cloud. Having said that, personalization works very well with Commerce Cloud because there's a very organized structure and there's a data layer most of the time that is easily managed. So personalization works well with Commerce Cloud. Maybe that's why there's not a solution kit, because you don't really need one.
Yeah, I was going to say all the global templates and things that already exist there, you can look at that as your solutions kit, right? I mean, all you got to do with Commerce Cloud is really drop the beacon in there and go to work for the most part. Which is vastly different than how you work with Experience Cloud, right? It's like a couple of hours before you can get that working. So yeah, there's nothing special there, but all the regular site functionality that you would get through the global templates or things you might have saved off from previous projects will all work there just fine.
Wonderful. Thank you. And this is more of a generic question, Chris, about the PLC course for somebody who wants to learn the MCP. What if somebody is not a partner? What are the ways that they can learn?
PLC is our partner learning camp, and it is a system designed and built for partners of the Salesforce ecosystem. It's only accessible if you have a partner account. Trailhead is a good way to learn the concepts of personalization. There aren't many hands-on exercises for Trailhead. This is a great thing to talk about. So resources out in the ecosystem, personalization has been behind. It was a new product a couple of years ago. We're just finally now getting to a critical mass of people really understanding the product, like Ben and Mateusz, who are starting to put content out in the world. So really, we're looking for the community to help teach the community. This whole series is amazing, and I think it's the first of its kind. So trailblazers trailblazing at their best. It's amazing. But I mean, the short answer is work with it.
There are two other options apart
Great.
from what Chris mentioned. If you are not a partner, but you have Interaction Studio / personalization in your company, there is a campus that you can get the learning. It's close to PLC, not that much, but it's more than Trailhead. So if you have personalization, go to the campus. It's available directly from your personalization account. So this is yet another option. And the last option is for those that have very big pocket, which is in the Trailhead Academy. There is a new 4-day course for the personalization, which is quite expensive, but you don't have to be partner. You don't have to have access to the personalization. And there is 4-day, 8 hours a day course for the tool.
Can we all just hang out all the time? Thank you for bringing those up. That course is brand new. We actually helped the Trailhead team design it based on the PLC curriculum. It's brand new. It's not ingrained in my mind to talk about it often. It's a 3-day course, virtual with a live trainer. Yeah, 3-day virtual live trainer, 8 hours a day. It's very good. So that is something customers can do. It's not really something an individual would probably want to go through because you have to pay for it. But it is definitely an option. I also listed, there is a YouTube series from Salesforce that you can review personalization items. I put that link into the chat as well.
That's something new to me, Chris. And thanks for bringing it up, Matthews. So 3 days, 8 hours, 24 hours worth of learning. I'm sure it will have a lot of content and something to learn for everybody.
My other take on here too would be, if you have personalization, you can create new data sets. You don't have to use the website that you currently work with. Go find a website you like and see if you can throw personalization on there and use the plugin to inject it on that site. Generally, when I'm bringing developers on our site, that's what I have them do is I go out to the internet, find a site that you're interested in, and just put some basic personalization on there, fight through that site and get a feel for how different sites react and work. In conjunction with all the other things you can be doing there, I find that to be pretty effective as a way to really get used to the tool beyond just your website itself, or even your website, create a new data set with nothing in it and start from scratch trying to implement some of this stuff if you already have an existing thing. Again, you can use the plugin to inject to almost any site personalization on that site, and then play around, right? You're not going to break anything. You can just put data into an empty data set and delete it when you're done. There's no harm in doing that, and it's only operating in your browser. So some of it is just play around with it and break stuff, within a data set that you can control and not impact others.
That's a valuable tip, Ben. And I have one more question in the chat. Can we create revenue attribution models for each campaign type?
We create revenue attribution models for each. Can I get more context around what we're trying to achieve, I guess? My mind's going towards goals, but I don't actually understand the question fully. But maybe somewhere in that realm.
Yeah, now, Lakshya, if you want to unmute and add more details to that, please do that.
Yeah, hi, this is Laksh. So I just wanted to know if, let's say, if I have different types of campaigns, can we create a custom model based on our business needs?
Are you referring to like a model in terms of like a machine learning model, the data model? What's the model in this context, I guess, is where I was confused.
Let's say if we have created a data campaign or a push campaign. So I just wanted to know how many people have engaged with that campaign and then they have made a transaction.
Gotcha. Yeah, so goals is what you want to use there. So goals are effectively just segments that you assign as a goal. So you can create a segment based on, hey, if they saw this campaign, if they bought this type of product, if they spent this much money, right? You can create a segment of people that did those actions. Then within the personalization tool, create that as a goal. And then in your campaign, you can select any of those goals at any time and look at, are you achieving that goal in context of that campaign?
Okay, and how about if you want to place a date time window over there?
A date time of what?
So if you wanted the window attribution to be changed, it can be done in the user interface. But Chris, please don't listen. It's crap.
So
Okay, it's recorded. He can watch it later.
It's fine. It's fine. There is in the UI in personalization, there's always a date window. So anytime you're looking at any report, any screen of personalization, it's referencing that window. So if you're looking at a report and you want to change the window, go change that date window at the top. It is, I'll leave it there. Do that.
Yeah, so the window is one thing, but also if you go to the specific report for the campaign, there is also attribution window, which is a bit of outside of the generic window for how the report is scoped. So we can also use it to, for example, tell that, okay, I want only the attribution if the user made a transaction within 30 minutes of clicking through the recommendation. So this is probably closer to what you are saying. But the problem and the reason for my previous word is that there are few places in the Interaction Studio where you can see the revenue, and their attribution models are different from place to place. So it's relatively hard to have a full picture of how truly the revenue can be attributed, especially directly attributed to the campaign. Because in many cases, there is only the fuzzy attribution. Like if you go to the campaign level, if you click, for example, the open attribution or the impression attribution, if user view the campaign and purchased anything, it will be triggered as a attributed revenue, which is in most cases not that cool for what business wants.
That's true. Just to add on to that, so you have a campaign, it runs. If the user sees that campaign or many campaigns, if anything is bought within the user session, all the campaigns well receive attribution. And that's kind of what you're talking about, Matt, where, yeah, where it's kind of a blanket attribution. So that's good to understand though. And it, you know,
But
so when you're
that's where
looking
the
at reporting,
custom goals
understand
come
that.
into play.
Yeah.
Right. So look at creating your segments and then setting those goals, and you can probably achieve 99% of what you want to do that way.
Or just output the UTMs, capture it with Google Analytics, and calculate the attribution there.
Or use another product. That's another way to do it.
That's wonderful. And I really enjoyed this session. I learned a lot personally. And thank you very much, Ben, Matthias, and Chris. And from the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank each one of you. You have been so active in the community, willing to share your knowledge and expertise with the community. And I really mean it. Without your blogs and without the sessions, your sessions, the community wouldn't be able to learn this much. And also MCP or the data cloud or the marketing cloud resources being a little bit limited. Your expertise and the way that you're sharing really means a lot to the community. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having us. This is always fun.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So I'm going to stop the recording now. We have one Salesforce certification voucher to